Today's lesson focuses on criminal procedure as it applies to cybercrime investigations. In this lesson, we move into how investigators must legally conduct cybercrime investigations while respecting constitutional protections. Cyber investigations introduce new procedural challenges because digital evidence does not exist in the same physical space as traditional evidence. Instead, it may exist on phones, servers, social media accounts, or even across international networks. Despite these differences, constitutional law still applies, particularly the Fourth Amendment, which protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures. Understanding these procedures is critical because improper evidence collection can result in suppression of evidence or even case dismissal. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to first, explain how constitutional protections apply to cybercrime investigations, particularly the Fourth Amendment. Second, apply Fourth Amendment standards to digital searches and seizures, recognizing that digital evidence often requires additional safeguards. Third, describe lawful arrest procedures in cybercrime cases, including how probable cause is established through digital evidence. Fourth, understand evidentiary rules for digital evidence, including authentication and chain of custody. Fifth, analyze major U.S. Supreme Court cases that shape digital criminal procedure. Finally, you should be able to distinguish between ethical responsibilities discussed in Lesson 3 and the procedural legal requirements discussed in Lesson 4. Ethics guide how professionals should behave. Procedures dictate how investigations must legally occur. Before we begin examining the legal framework, take a moment to consider your current understanding. Many people are familiar with traditional criminal procedures such as searching a house or collecting physical evidence. However, cybercrime investigations often involve digital devices, online platforms, and cloud-based systems that complicate traditional investigative practices. Ask yourself, how comfortable am I with the idea of how law enforcement searches a digital device? What level of privacy should people expect with their phones or online accounts? These questions are at the center of many modern court decisions. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. Traditionally, this protection applied to physical spaces such as homes, vehicles, and personal property. However, courts have made it clear that these protections also extend to digital environments. Today, much of a person's private life is stored digitally. This includes mobile phones, social media accounts, email communications, computer files, cloud storage systems, network logs. Because these systems contain extremely personal information, courts increasingly recognize that digital searches can be more intrusive than traditional searches. Before continuing, we need to understand several key legal terms used in criminal procedure. A search occurs when the government intrudes into an individual's reasonable expectation of privacy in order to find evidence. An unreasonable search occurs when that intrusion lacks proper legal justification or exceeds acceptable limits. The term private refers to property owned by an individual or private organization rather than the government. A seizure occurs when law enforcement interferes with a person's possessory interest in property, meaning they take control of that property. In cyber investigations, seizures often involve digital devices or data storage systems rather than traditional objects. Traditional crimes typically occur within a physical crime scene. Evidence might include fingerprints, DNA, physical objects, or witness testimony. Jurisdiction is usually local, meaning the investigation occurs within one geographic area. Cybercrime is very different. Instead of a physical crime scene, investigators deal with virtual environments. Evidence includes digital files, metadata, log records, IP addresses, digital footprints. Another major challenge is jurisdiction. Cybercrime often crosses state, national, and international boundaries, meaning multiple agencies must cooperate during investigations. Traditional investigations rely heavily on physical evidence and human observation. Investigators collect witness statements, surveillance footage, DNA evidence, physical items related to the crime. Cyber investigations focus on digital evidence such as system logs, internet activity, metadata, digital communications. Because cybercrime can occur across many locations simultaneously, cooperation between agencies becomes essential, including federal agencies such as the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. One of the most important legal differences in cyber investigations involves probable cause. In traditional investigations, probable cause often relates to physical locations, tangible items. For example, police may obtain a warrant to search a house for stolen property. In digital investigations, however, investigators may be dealing with massive quantities of data stored within a single device. A single smartphone can contain years of messages, photos, emails, browsing history, location data. Because of this, courts require greater precision when drafting search warrants for digital evidence. Think of a modern smartphone as a digital filing cabinet containing nearly every aspect of a person's life. Smartphones store communication logs, financial records, medical information, location data, personal messages, and photographs. Years ago, this information would have been stored in multiple locations, such as filing cabinets or a savings deposit box at a local bank. Now it exists in one device. This is one reason courts have determined that digital searches require stronger privacy protections. Because digital devices contain so much personal information, courts apply heightened scrutiny to digital search warrants. Investigators must ensure that warrants are not overly broad. If a search exceeds the authorized scope, several legal consequences may occur. Evidence may be suppressed under the exclusionary rule, meaning it cannot be used in court. In extreme cases, violations can even result in case dismissal. Therefore, investigators must carefully articulate what data they seek, why it is relevant to the crime, and how the search will remain limited. One of the most important Supreme Court cases involving digital searches is Riley v. California, 2014. David Riley was arrested during a traffic stop and his cell phone was searched without a warrant. Police discovered digital evidence linking him to gang activity and a shooting. Riley argued that the search violated his Fourth Amendment rights. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously that police must obtain a warrant before searching digital information on a cell phone seized during an arrest. The court recognized that smartphones contain vast amounts of personal information and therefore require greater privacy protections than traditional physical items. This case fundamentally changed how law enforcement conducts digital searches. Digital data reveals extremely detailed information about a person's life. Examples include email communications, social media interactions, GPS location history, browsing history. These records can reveal a person's daily routines, relationships, political views, and medical conditions just as a starting point. Because of this level of personal insight, courts increasingly recognize that individuals maintain strong privacy interests in digital information. Because digital searches are so intrusive, investigators must meet higher evidentiary standards when establishing probable cause. Probable cause must demonstrate 1. Why digital evidence likely exists. 2. How that evidence relates to the crime. 3. Why searching the device is necessary. Investigators cannot simply argue that data might be useful. Instead, they must clearly explain the connection between the digital data and the suspected criminal activity. Digital warrants must follow three key principles. First, they must specify the exact device or account being searched. Second, they must define what types of data investigators are authorized to seize. Third, they must restrict the search to relevant information only. Courts are very careful to prevent investigators from conducting general exploratory searches through a person's entire digital life, as can be found on devices like smartphones. A digital warrant is a court-authorized order allowing law enforcement to search and seize digital evidence. These warrants can apply to a wide variety of digital systems, including smartphones, computers, cloud storage accounts, email servers, social media platforms, internet service provider records. Because digital data is often stored across multiple systems, investigators may require multiple warrants from different jurisdictions. Courts require specificity in digital warrants. For example, a warrant authorizing the search of all digital devices owned by a suspect would likely be considered overly broad. A lawful warrant would instead specify the exact device, identifying details such as serial numbers, relevant time periods, specific categories of data. This level of precision protects individuals from unreasonable searches. Traditional warrants are limited by physical space. Investigators search visible objects in a specific location. Digital warrants are very different. Digital storage can be enormous, and data may be hidden, encrypted, or deleted. Additionally, digital evidence often requires extended forensic analysis, which may take weeks or months. For these reasons, digital warrants require greater legal precision and technical expertise. Historically, courts have applied the third-party doctrine utilizing the same scope among all cases. This doctrine stated that individuals lose certain privacy protections when they voluntarily share information with a third party. Two important cases establish this doctrine. United States versus Miller, concerning bank records Smith versus Maryland, with dialed phone numbers. Under these rulings, information shared with banks or telephone companies was not considered private, but voluntarily shared. Digital technology challenges the traditional third-party doctrine. Modern digital platforms collect enormous amounts of information about users. Social media accounts can reveal personal relationships, location history, habits and routines, political beliefs. Because of the sensitive nature of this data, courts increasingly question whether individuals truly voluntarily share this information. Another major Supreme Court case is Carpenter versus United States, 2018. Investigators obtained 127 days of historical cell site location information from a phone company without a search warrant. This data allowed law enforcement to track the suspect's movements. The Supreme Court ruled that long-term cell site location data requires a warrant supported by probable cause. This decision limited the traditional third-party doctrine and recognized strong privacy protections for long-term digital tracking. Just like traditional investigations, cyber investigations require probable cause for arrest. However, probable cause may come from digital sources, such as IP address tracing, financial transaction records, digital forensic analysis, undercover online operations. Because cybercrime can involve anonymous identities, investigators often rely heavily on technical forensic evidence to identify suspects. Undercover operations are commonly used in cybercrime investigations. Officers may operate under online identities to infiltrate criminal networks involved in crimes such as child exploitation, online drug markets, illegal weapons trafficking, human trafficking. Courts allow these operations as long as investigators avoid entrapment, meaning they cannot pressure individuals into committing crimes they otherwise would not have committed. When officers seize digital devices, they must follow strict procedures to preserve evidence. Securing the device immediately is the first, most critical step. Preventing remote wiping, where suspects delete data from another location, is also a major priority to protect case integrity. Third, devices are often placed in Faraday bags, which block wireless signals. Finally, investigators must carefully document every step of the evidence collection process. Digital evidence must be preserved carefully to maintain its integrity. Investigators create forensic images, which are exact digital copies of the original device. The original device is preserved in its original state, while analysts work from the forensic copy. This ensures the evidence remains reliable and admissible in court. Cybercrime trials often rely heavily on expert testimony. Experts explain complex technical evidence to judges and juries. Before expert testimony is allowed, courts evaluate it using the Doe-Bear standard, which ensures that the expert's methods are scientifically reliable. Digital evidence must also meet federal rules of evidence requirements, including authentication, reliability, and proper chain of custody. Without adhering to proper evidentiary standards, the exclusionary rule, if not case dismissal, could occur. This could drastically impact future cases related to the current issue being investigated, as well as the integrity of an officer's career. As a look back for comparison, take a look at the ethics as compared to the procedural methods involved with cyber investigations. Lesson 3 instructed us that there are many ethical standards in place that will affect professional responsibility when investigating a case, both in the traditional and digital worlds. Agency conduct and integrity standards are heightened among officers. Within this lesson, procedural processes to ensure the constitutionality of a case are at the forefront of investigations. Compliance with legal standards for procurement of data that can lead to arrests, prosecutions, and trials must be followed and examined under strict scrutiny while upholding constitutional safeguards. Overall, it can be seen how Lesson 4 operationalizes the ethical foundation discussed in Lesson 3. Now that we have completed this lesson, reconsider the questions from the beginning. You should now have a stronger understanding of constitutional protections in cyber investigations, digital search warrants, key Supreme Court cases affecting digital privacy, evidence collection procedures, courtroom requirements for digital evidence. Understanding these procedures ensures that cyber investigations remain both effective and constitutional.